INDA, as you know, would provide remedies for sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination in the workplace by state, federal, and private employers. To justify the inclusion of state employees, the Supreme Court tells us that Congress must point to examples of state discrimination violating or implicating constitutional rights. State governments have a long history of discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgendered or LGBT employees because of prejudice and erroneous stereotypes. State exclusionary policies took shape in the first half of the 20th century. Legislatures and officials declared sexual and gender minorities unfit for public service because of state-endorsed beliefs that they were, first, degenerate persons, I'm quoting, who engaged in immoral and illegal activities. Second, they were characterized as treacherous and predatory, particularly against children. And third, they were characterized as disruptive influences who would undermine public projects. State discriminatory policies drove most LGBT employees into the closet, where they kept their identity a secret. Between 1945 and 1969, state and federal governments conducted campaigns to open the closet door and purge these workers from government service. My written statement, which I'd like to be introduced into the record, provides an account of the purges at the federal civil service level and in the civil service and public schools of California and Florida. Usually without due process, employees were dismissed because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. For example, Thomas Surrock of California lost his state teaching certificate and his livelihood based upon an alleged 1962 admission that he had homosexual tendencies. The state authorities took that as per se evidence of immorality and predatory proclivities. By 1969, these policies were being challenged. Medical experts rejected the common stereotypes about homosexuals as scientifically baseless and argued instead that the harmful pathology was actually homophobia. At the same time, thousands of gay people came out of their closets and persuaded colleagues and Americans that their private consensual conduct did not merit public censure, that LGBT people are trustworthy workers and their presence is not disruptive. Accepting these arguments, a majority of states now provide that state employees should not be subject to discrimination because of sexual orientation, and an increasing number have reached the same conclusion with regard to gender identity. But there remains a significant amount of government discrimination, in part because many Americans continue to believe that such employees are immoral, predatory, and disruptive. For example, Colorado voters in 1992 overrode state and municipal directives prohibiting discrimination in state and municipal workplaces. The arguments made against job rights for gay people included the following, and I'm quoting from the official ballot materials. The homosexual lifestyle is sex-addicted and tragic. Homosexuals are diseased and short-lived, and they want to recruit children and destroy the family. Even when they're not so explicitly set forth as in the Colorado campaign, these anti-gay tropes of immorality, predation, and disruption still motivate state officials to discriminate against sexual and gender minorities. Consider my own case. I was denied tenure at the University of Virginia's School of Law in 1985, based in part upon my sexual orientation. Although I was one of the law school's top teachers, had written several articles, delivered congressional testimony, and written a pathfinding legislation casebook, my petition for tenure was rejected based upon the recommendation of the Appointments Committee. That recommendation was probably tainted. For one thing, the committee chair kept me in the dark about my rights to respond to criticisms, and then viciously attacked me when senior faculty confronted him about his own neglect. Near the end of the process, the chair barged into my office and subjected me to a violent tirade that included charges of backstabbing that he said he should have expected of a quote-unquote faggot. Apparently, the chair thought that I had complained about his neglect, when in fact I remained clueless even as he spat on me and called me dirty names. During this tirade, the chair never shared with me his committee's criticisms or notice of my rights to respond. These procedural infractions made a difference in my case because the committee's report to the faculty was in fact filled with factual misstatements and fabrications. Given the name-calling by the chair, the committee's violation of the law school's official procedures, and the libelous nature of the report, I believe that my being gay, even though closeted, played an important role in the tenure denial. Being gay created a hysterical atmosphere where I was accused of being a troublemaker for mistakes that the committee made. My 10-year experience suggests that state employers still discriminate against sexual and gender minorities for the same kinds of reasons that were trumpeted as government orthodoxy for most of the 20th century. Another lesson of my experience is that discrimination does no one any good. Although I was able to relocate at Georgetown and then Yale, I was sorry to leave Virginia, where both of my grandfathers received their law degrees. Conversely, Virginia did itself no good by its treatment of me. I think they lost a really good civil procedure and legislation teacher, someone who could have and would have provided mentorship to feminist as well as gay students, and a scholar, for the record, who has been more cited in American law reviews than anyone who in the history of the University of Virginia's law school has ever actually gotten tenure. The whole process was a waste. With ENDA, Congress has an opportunity to take a leadership position to prevent some of the waste of human talent that occurs when state officials harass or exclude qualified LGBT workers who are usually eager, as I was, to contribute to public projects. Thank you, sir.